Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, and have a look at this. Teacher's starter deck has finally been leaked, and these are the new 5 cards that will be coming out on June 6th, I believe, with starter deck number 27, which will be for Marshall D. Teach. We first got Avilo Pizarro, Katarina Devon, St. Juan Wolf, Kuzan, and a new big boss monster in Marshall D. Teach. Now, a lot of these cards I think are very usable in the deck at the moment, and will change up the way it's played pretty much. And I think it can still be contending for a top deck coming into OP11, and I'm really excited to go over them now. Starting off with 1 cost, 1k power with a 1k counter, we've got Avelo Pizarro. Now, his abilities activate main once per turn. You may rest one of your full head cards. If your leader has the Blackbeard Pirates type, this character gains plus 4000 power during this turn. Now, this card does require you to rest your stage, and ideally we don't want to be resting our stage just to get another 1k out of our opponent's hand. And especially in the OP11 meta with blue-purple Luffy, we can't even get much value from this card as it's a 6k leader. It is nice because on KO it draws you a card, which is good for cycle, but for 1 Don I'd much rather play out My Era Begins, a Lafitte, or even the new Katarina Devon 2k. It's not a great card in my opinion, but I can see why people would like it for the cycle on KO. Going over to the next card though, Katarina Devon, 1 drop, 1k power for 2k counter. Activate main, you may trash this character. If your leader has the Blackbeard Pirates type, give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 cost during this turn, and on KO draw 1 card. Honestly, I think this card is really good, a good staple 2k. I think it's obviously a slightly worse version than Stronger, however it does give 1 minus cost, and it can cycle you if somehow they manage to remove it before you get its effect off. So it's not too bad, but it's a really good 2k counter, and I think it's more usable than Shiryu in most circumstances, as I think this starter deck heavy emphasizes more cost reduction in KO. And on the 1 drop curve we do have the stage My Era Begins, Avelo Pizarro, or Lafitte contesting it, and I think it fits in pretty well. It also does have Stronger, as I said, but Stronger requires you to cycle through your hand, and sometimes with Teach you have cards that you don't want to cycle quite yet. So I think this is nice that it just doesn't cycle and just gives 1 minus cost, which can set up for bigger plays later in the game. However, I think mainly it will be just a solid 2k that you can use in the game. And then going on to the third card, we've got St. Juan Wolf. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it, but I think it's a pretty interesting card. It's a 4 cost 6000 power blocker with a counter of 1000. With the effect, if your leader has a Blackbeard Pirates type, this character gains blocker and +1 cost for every 4 cards in your trash, and on play, trash 1 card from your hand. Now the on play doesn't activate because we're Blackbeard, and it obviously gets blocker, which is really nice. Now, I'm not too sure how good this card is, but in comparison to the other 4 drops you can play on this turn, you've got Laboon, Jesus Burgess, and Shiryu. Now, it does have a lot of competition, as we do want to get Jesus Burgess out pretty early, or a Laboon to start cost minusing and be able to KO our opponent's board. But I think it generates a lot of value in the fact that it can block a 5k swing for free, which is really good into our rush matchups. But then again, if your playstyle is more KO or just building up a Burgess army, you might prefer to just play out a Burgess here or a Laboon in order to cull your opponent's board. Same with Shiryu. However, I think Shiryu's falling a bit off in priority as a lot of people play around it now, and there aren't too many prior 3 drop bodies that you want to be KOing that people are just going to play out on their second turn. But overall, I think you might be able to get a lot of value with it, blocking leader swings every turn, so you can keep your life healthy, which is always a problem with Teach, especially in rush matchups. Now going on to the 4th card, we have Kuzan, which I think is a really good card. It's a 6 drop body with 6k power, 1k counter. It has blocker, and on KO play up to one of your Blackbeard Pirates type characters cards with a cost of 5 or less from your trash rested. So this is really good. It replaces itself on the field and sets up another body for your next turn. Now on the 6 Don curve, the other options you have is Van Augur, Kuzan, Katarina Devon. You can also play a Liberation, a Shiryu, or a Burgess. Now what's also good is these bodies you can also play out with Kuzan's effect, except Liberation of course, as it's an event card, but these bodies are the available cards that you can play out from your trash rested. So something like getting out a Van Augur, cheating out another Burgess, or a Devon for next turn with double attack or banish could be really devastating to the opponent. I'm not sure how good it would be to bring out another Kuzan unless it's the opponent's last swing, because swinging out a 5k body is pretty easy. But if you bring out a Burgess and it's already got +2, +3k power, it's really hard and stunts the opponent from being able to swing at it, and sets up your Burgess to swing next turn and create a lot of pressure that way. And I think it's really good. It's blocker, so you can choose when it dies. So it does set up for Kuzan players, and it can set up for Van Augur if you need more cost reduction. It just opens a lot of plays that you can do. So I think it's a really good staple card for the deck. And on to the last new card, we have Martial D Teach, the new boss monster, competing with the 10-drop Teach, but it really synergizes well with the Van Augur, giving -3 to anybody. So if you play Van Augur out on your 5-don turn and 7-don turn, you set up this boy, you've got -3 cost with Van Augur, and then anything your opponent played on 6-don turn will die, assuming it doesn't have any additional cost increase, because it can KO any 6 cost with -3 plus KOing a character with a cost of 3 or less, which is really good. Now this card is basically Jack, but it is searchable for the Blackbeard deck, and on KO you can add up 1 black card from your trash to your hand. Sorry, I skipped over its stat line. It's a 7-drop body with 8,000 power, 8,000 power rather, sorry. And activate main, you may rest this character, KO up to 1 character with a cost of 3 or less, and on KO add up to 1 black card from your trash from your hand. So when it dies, it's able to cycle itself back to your hand or another card you need, such as 10-drop Teach, if you've accidentally trashed that with earlier in the game, or if you've needed to trash it earlier in the game because you have too many bricks in hand. Now this is really good. Like I said, similar to Jack, it is a brick, has the same stat line. No cost increase, but it just being searchable and being able to KO units from 3 and under is really, really good for this deck, and opts us and puts us more in a position to be more cost minusing and just really just going ham on our opponent's board. It's also pseudo replacement for our 10-drop Teach. We've got another win con to play around. Rather than just going wide with Burgess and playing with Teach, we can play more around KOing the opponent's board and keeping their board under control. So I feel like it sort of doesn't replace, but is another win con that you can play around in the game. So looking at the deck list that I'm thinking about, this is just from what I'm thinking. I've got 4 Full Ahead Islands, 4 My Era Begins, 4 Stronger, 4 of the new Katarina Devon, 4 Burgess, 4 Van Augur, 4 Kuzan, 4 of the new Martial D Teach, 4 Finger Pistols, 4 of the OP09 Martial D Teach, 10 cost, 4 of the new Kuzans, 2 Lafitte's, 2 Senguan Wolves, and 2 Black Holes. I'm choosing not to run a Velo Pizarro. I don't think it's super useful in the deck and what we're trying to do. I did opt for Katarina Devon, the new 2k over Shirus, because I think it's more useful in cost minusing with Stronger, and then to play around with Martial D Teach, the 7 cost. And then the rest of the deck is pretty standard. I've opted to go more heavy on the Blackbeard because I like the options of searching whatever card I want, and I feel like adding like Laboons or Mancherries to cycle it relies on you drawing them to hand, and whilst they are very good cards and synergize really well, I like playing a more full Blackbeard deck, and Laboons are also very expensive right now. But overall, I think this is a pretty standard deck list. It's not too out there, it doesn't run too many tech cards, but coming for possible additions, we've got a few different cards that I think you can run. You can run Doc Q. You can see I've cut Doc Q from my list. I feel like we're playing more around the 7 cost Teach now. I feel like whilst you can still sneak in a Doc Q on your turn 2 play, I feel like if you miss that, then you're never playing this card, and it just becomes a 1k counter and a cycle card. I don't think it's super useful. You can technically play it out, and if it never gets used, you can use the 7 cost Teach to kill it. I do believe it says you can KO up to 1 character with cost of 3 or less, so that does include Doc Q, so you can just kill it to the cycle. However, I think it is a little bit of a waste and unfortunate if you're using it to kill your own board. You could also do the same with a Velo Pizarro to get that cycle, but overall I just don't think it's really worth it in the deck at the moment. Next card is Vasco Shot. I've cut these and I've opted to go for the Sanguan Wolf blockers because I feel like if I get this out on 4 Don, I can prevent so many swings. It's really good on the 4 Don curve. On the 5 Don curve, I don't think it's particularly useful. I think I'd rather just get out an Augur to play for the 7-cost Teach. So I can see why you would want to run Vasco Shot. You can sneak it in on 9 Don maybe, or on your second 3 Don turn, since we're not running any dot Qs. But I'd then again rather just play more My Errors or Lafitte's to get more searches off at that time. And Lafitte in a pseudo blocker is pretty good. The other tech card, Shiryu, another 2k counter, searchable, which is really nice. I feel like I'm used to running this deck with so few 2k counters. I don't feel like I really use Shiryu that often. He's mainly just used as a 2k counter, so I think the 2k counters I've got in the deck now more usable in customizing and playing around with the 7-cost Teach. So I feel like this Shiryu's fallen off a little bit. He's not as usable, and so I've opted to not put him in, but I can see why you'd want more 2Ks for more safety, maybe in the early game and late game stages to counter out of those big swings. The next tech card that I've chosen not to add to my deck is the 4-cost Shiryu. Now this card was really good to KO 3-cost cards, anything 3 or less, right as they're played the turn after if you're going second. But I feel like now we're so much more focused on playing for 7-cost Teach. I think our first curve is looking a lot better, so we're not getting much value from this card as we used to, and especially with just with Kuzan, Van Augers, and Marshall D Teachers, you're going to want to play them out on 5 Don, on 6 Don, and you're not going to often find spots where you're going to want to play out Shiryu when you can just wait for Marshall D Teach and then KO anything under 3 or less, when you can combo it with the Van Augur. The next card is Katarina Devon, the 1k that's a little bit of everything. I actually really like this card. I think it's a really good toolbox card. You can also cheat it out with both of the Kuzans, and it can be whatever you want. It can be a blocker, double attack, or banish. I think it's a really interesting card that I might actually try to mess around with. I think running 4 7-cost Teachers and 4 10-cost Teachers might be a bit too much and be pretty bricky. So I think there's arguments to reduce the amount and just play more for board priority and board removal, and then sneaking in a couple of Devons for toolbox cards off of the Kuzans. The next card, we've got Liberation. I've decided not to run in my deck as well. I feel like we've got so much KO power now, and we go wide as we do that Liberation isn't as useful as it is. Maybe if there were more matchups where they'd go wide and lower to the ground in that 6 and 4 cost area, it would be more useful, but I'm not seeing that much in the current meta. And the next 2 cards I feel like are pretty useful. We've got Laboon and Mancherry. I think these cards are both pretty good. They're not Blackbeard cards, but they suit the deck really well. Mancherry can really help you cycle, similar to Kuzan, for only 2 Don, and Laboon has that extra 1 cost reach. Then Van Augur has -4 rather than -3, which I think is really good, but I think on the curve I'd rather play out Van Augur. I think it's harder to kill as it's rested. I feel like once Laboon -4, it's basically gone. It's really hard to protect this card. So I personally prefer Van Augur, even though it does have the lower reach. I have a slight preference. It's also searchable, so I can control what happens more and slightly more consistent, but I do believe Laboon is still a really good card and might be like a 2 or 3, can maybe be added as a 2 or 3 of, so you see it, and if you see it on curve it's really strong. You get that 1 extra reach, and it can be pretty pivotal in some of the later game cost minusing when your opponent's playing out lots of big bodies. But yeah, that's the end of the video. That's all I've really got for the new cards. I'm pretty excited to actually play these in a few weeks time and mess around with these deck lists, mess around with these ratios. I think there are probably even cards that I'm missing that I'm not even thinking about we could add, or maybe some cards that I think are good, like maybe the Sangwan Wolf I can't find much success on. I'm running 2 black holes because I'm expecting Blackbeard to go up in priority, so I'm running 2 black holes in order to combat the enemy Blackbeard's Burgess, because I feel like that's going to be a problem, and we're not going to be able to play around many Teachers if we're in the mirror matchup, because I think the mirror matchup is getting a bit more grindy with this, because we're going to have to play heavier into the Burgesses and maybe Van Auger and Kuzans, where it can't be KO'd, so that we can avoid things like the finger pistol and the 7-cost Marshall D Teach. So I'm really interested and excited to experiment with that, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, leave a like, subscribe, and hope you see you in the next one. And whilst you're here, you should have a look at this.